After this exciting session, we are thrilled to move into the closing session with Drs. Korzenik and Pratt and Ricky Saper. Over to you, Dr. Korzenik.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that session. And delighted to say you've almost made it through. We're at the closing session. You've heard over the last 48 hours a good deal about the state of the art of PSC, what questions are being answered and what questions are being asked. You hopefully have a very extensive appreciation of both how much we're learning, but also how much we have to do, how much we still have to learn. You've heard about advances in genetics and the microbiome and the environment and with regard to interactions of IBD with PSC. There's ongoing research in genetics, in omics, in the microbiome, and immune profiling, all of interest and seeds of hope to direct us towards therapies. We've heard about exciting efforts to understand the epigenetics of PSC, which may be a key driver of inflammation. We've heard about promising new therapies such as berberine linked to ursodeoxycholic acid and about new imaging methodologies. We've also heard about the possible impact of nutrition on PSC. We've heard about ongoing work at both pharma and academic centers of large efforts and work of some of the academic PSC centers, such as our own, the Resnick Center at BWH at Brigham and in Norway's PSC Center, as well as others, and of efforts of individual researchers. Each study builds on the works of others. So I'll turn it over to Dan to discuss a bit more about what we've covered.
Thank you, Josh. Well, everyone, we've reached the end of 2 really busy days. A lot has been covered, a lot has been achieved. Yeah, I wanted to start with just a brief reflection on why this organization, this conference are so important. When my PSC patients come for their routine clinic visits, time is spent to not only address the standard medical issues related to their PSC, but equally importantly, I take the time to understand how my patients are processing and coping with their PSC diagnosis. My patients often talk about the importance of having access to education with accurate information, and the importance of being part of a community of people on a similar journey. This message was heard again in the wonderful PSC Patients Perspective session this morning, moderated by Mary Bias. This is exactly the void that PSC Partners helps to fill for some patients and their caregivers. And while that role is absolutely essential, PSC Partners aspires to and achieves much more than that through their support of PSC-related research. PSC Partners has awarded now over $5 million in research funding through their annual research grant program. PSC Partners have engaged with an accomplished group of 16 researchers and clinicians who form the Scientific Medical Advisory Committee. The involvement of these PSC leaders highlights the level of support and commitment there is in the academic community to support patients with PSC and PSC-related research efforts. It is this group, along with the PSC Partners Board of Directors, that reviews all grant applications. The importance of this seed funding cannot be overstated. Along with Dr. Alan Mullen, a hepatology colleague of mine at MGH, I was blessed to receive a PSC Partners Canada grant a few years ago that allowed us to establish an organoid program for patients with PSC that we hope will provide important insights in PSC and produce data that will allow us to be competitive for larger grants down the line. Happily, PSC Partners remains committed to funding their annual research grants. But now let's switch to what has gone on during this conference. What we have learned these past 2 days is that PSC Partners has much bigger plans for their support of PSC research than just individual research grants. The launch of the International Collaborative Research Network was the highlight of this meeting. Generally speaking, the goal of the ICRN is simple: accelerate PSC research for the benefit of patients with PSC. How does PSC Partners hope to achieve this aspirational goal with within the context of the ICRN. To start to understand this, we can look one last time to the Castleman Disease Collaborative Network, the research model we heard about yesterday, developed by Dr. David Fagenbaum and his team to accelerate research and treatment for Castleman disease. And they achieved their goals by encouraging and facilitating collaboration among the global research community, mobilizing necessary resources, and strategically investing in high impact research. Most importantly, and just as we are doing with the ICRN, patients and their loved ones are important and valued stakeholders in the process. One important step in the ICRN process has already occurred. It occurred yesterday with the small group think tanks. It will help guide the development of the PSC Partners Strategic Research Plan. But what was exciting is that today we have heard about parts of that research plan that are already underway. Multi-year initiatives focused on supporting drug development. The first is the WIN study, the Worldwide Integration of Natural History Databases. Excuse me. This is an exciting initiative with the goal of enrolling 2,000 patients in a true natural history database. Goals include identifying novel biomarkers, developing external control arms for clinical trials, and gathering prospective quality of life data. The second is the PROM project, what we just heard about, the patient-reported outcome measure study. We know that reducing symptom burden and improving quality of life are important endpoints of clinical trials. The PSC specific PROMs are lacking. This is a project designed to fill that important need. And the final important point I'd like to make is that progress in our understanding of what causes PSC and identifying effective therapies for PSC has to have an interdisciplinary and collaborative approach. This realization is something PSC Partners understands and embraces. I particularly love Dr. Carlson's slide of the PSC clock and all of the active areas of research trying to understand pathogenesis. But what I particularly love was his point that while each of us may have a particular area of research expertise and interest, we have to be open to all possibilities if we are to succeed. I leave this conference feeling energized and very optimistic, and I hope you do too. The combination of a vibrant, talented, and engaged patient community with committed and accomplished researchers and clinicians is destined to succeed. It has been a pleasure and an honor to serve as your co-host. I will look forward to seeing you all in the near future. I'll turn it back now to Dr. Korzenik.
Thank you, Dan, and I certainly agree with all that you've said. I think the research presented here serves as important guideposts, whether they work, whether they succeed in their initial aim or they don't. We learn from all of it. Advances are happening. All of these efforts build on each other, and none succeed in isolation. And certainly what you've heard about here is just a small sample of the extensive research that's being done throughout the world. Several of the high impact research projects that Dan highlighted are being developed by PSC partners, including the launch of the ICRN, the International Collaborative Research Network, PSC Natural History Project, WIND, as well as the PROMs, all efforts underway, which are large, impactful studies. All of these bring together a large number of patients, researchers, and others to advance the field. The PSC Partners has been the critical link to facilitate, expand, and catalyze these programs. Our discussions as part of the ICRN at this conference are helping to shape the PSC research agenda. This effort will grow in importance and will guide researchers, clinicians, pharma, and other stakeholders. The process of how to intertwine PSCers and researchers and clinicians is an ongoing effort and will take some time to refine and understand how best to make it work. The work of David Fagenbaum and the Castleman's Disease Collaborative Network, as Dan mentioned, is really about how this type of effort can succeed with a broad impact on therapies, and their work is pointing a way forward for our efforts. This conference has been important both to learn about advances and hear the patient voice, and ultimately to bring in the patient voice to help shape the research agenda. We're all engaged in a process which we will hopefully find a way and help us as a community identify the fastest and most direct and most certain path to therapies for PSC. Seeing this progress is tremendously exciting. For ICRN and the research agenda, these discussions are not the end. We'll continue these conversations and work together. The PSC agenda will be further refined in the months ahead. The research agenda will serve as an important guide, and together we're creating an important infrastructure for natural history data, of biobanks, and of the ICRN, with an increasing number of groups interested and helping to make these studies and programs happen. The journey may seem long and too slow, but with the growing community being gently pushed along and encouraged by PSC partners, we're making progress that's accelerating. It may sometimes be difficult to appreciate the advances when you're experiencing a disease that is moving at its own pace in your body. I understand, and we need to move ahead with a sense of urgency and impatience. With all this understood, I am tremendously optimistic and excited. Some efforts can take a while other advances can happen more quickly and unexpectedly, but they all build on each other. I anticipate several therapies for PSC will emerge in the years ahead, both to treat inflammation and to reverse fibrosis. Though it may seem implausible where we are now, I do believe that to expect a cure is a reasonable hope and expectation in the not too distant future. And now over to you, Ricky.
You're on mute. Ricky, you're on mute.
Ricky, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, let's start again. Thank you, Dr. Korzenik and Dr. Pratt. And Dr. Korzenik, I hope what you said at the end will happen. So we all feel this sense of urgency, and thank you for understanding. So while this has been a really long but promising 2 days for all of us, and thanks to the expert leadership from our two co-hosts and additional insights from our wonderful international speakers, together we've accomplished what we set out to do: to present an overview of the state of international PSC research, to champion the patient voice as we continue to break down silos and other barriers slowing research, to spark multi-stakeholder collaboration and facilitate patient-driven projects and patient-focused drug development. We ended up with 550 attendees registered this weekend, 149 of which are researchers, clinicians, or pharma. So our so-called tiny mighty army is actually expanding. And to our co-hosts, Dr. Josh Korzenik and Dr. Dan Pratt, we couldn't have dreamed of having better partners to launch our most important undertaking to date. Your trust in us and your enthusiasm in collaborating with us to turn this conference into reality fill us with deep gratitude. You welcomed us into a territory that has been traditionally exclusive to clinicians and researchers. You encouraged us when we took the driver's seat, you advised us, and tirelessly participated in hours of planning sessions. I remember 3 years ago when Dr. Korzenik made us aware of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative RARES 1 grant and agreed to be the medical lead along with Dr. Chris Bolus. Looking back at where we were then, I realize how far we've come. And this is just the beginning. We look forward to continuing to work together in this fight with whatever it takes until a PSC diagnosis comes with a cure. The PSC Partners team and the PSC community, thank you both for your dedication to hearing and honoring the patient voice. I want to go through a few highlights. First, from day one, during the presentation of the draft research agenda, 28 excellent questions were shared by the community. These questions reflect the PSC patient voice and guide us as we push forward the most important research projects on the quest for a cure. 148 attendees participated in the ICR network breakout rooms yesterday. The most popular rooms were cause of PSC and genetics and inflammation and diet and nutrition. The topics of greatest interest were the cause of PSC, the PSC-IBD connection, and inflammation. Discussion of environmental factors, diet, and nutrition were also of great interest to attendees. Community engagement in the outstanding poster abstract session was high, with more than 30 questions posed to the presenters. And then a few highlights from today. In the patient session at the beginning of the day, we heard the open and honest stories from members of our PSC patient community about their journeys with PSC. There is no one-size-fits-all journey with PSC, and we should all lean on each other to help us get through the tough times. Research updates today. Dr. Green taught us about what is known about the cause of fibrosis in PSC and shared data from several outstanding posters about efforts to treat it. Dr. Carlson shared the incredible work being pursued in Oslo related to the genetics of PSC, the use of bile duct on a chip technologies to study PSC, and much more. Dr. Korzenik taught us about the connection between IBD and PSC, especially focusing on the role of the gut microbiome. There's lots of exciting research going on at his center and others to better understand the connections between PSC and IBD. In the Natural History and WIND think tank, natural history studies allow us to learn about the factors that predict PSC progression, identify biomarkers, create external control arms for clinical trials, and more. The WIND initiative will bring together many centers from across North America and Europe to gather high quality and standardized data from 2,000 patients over 5 years. There was quite a bit of discussion about diversity, both in terms of patient demographics and the characteristics of their disease. Diversity is so important to ensure that a natural history study is representative and valid. The WIND initiative will ensure that a diverse patient population is included. And in the last session, we learned about the importance of an effective fit-for-purpose patient-reported outcome measure in clinical trials so that PSC symptoms and quality of life are captured. Thank you as attendees for joining our think tanks to discuss the programs that PSC is launching within our ICR network to fill the huge gaps in PSC research. There is amazing power when patients and caregivers work closely with the scientific community to unite and harmonize international efforts to accelerate research and drug development. This weekend, we've heard the words hope, excitement, collaboration, progress. This is just the start of the ICR network. As we further expand the network, we will need continued input and guidance from all stakeholders. We will formulate a formal strategic research plan to guide our research efforts and expand our grants program that already supports over $5.5 million in international research grants. We will focus on supporting drug development through our 2-year multi-year projects, WIND and a PSC-specific PROM. Our PSC community is truly blessed by the number of passionate clinicians and researchers who are dedicating themselves professionally to improve our lives and provide us hope for the future. Our Scientific Medical Advisory Committee will continue to lead us, and we can't thank all of you enough. We also sincerely thank our industry partners who are running clinical trials to discover new therapies to lighten our disease burden and to find that elusive cure. And the patients and caregivers in our community are at the center of our ICR network. So everyone, please come along with us on our journey together. I want to finish up with just a few reminders about upcoming community programs. To continue our educational sessions from July through December, we will hold monthly post-event webinars covering everything from coping strategies, nutrition, clinical trials, symptom management, liver transplant, and beyond. Be sure to join us for these informative webinars. And still to come this afternoon, the exhibit booths are open from 2 to 3 p.m. The time to celebrate session for our patient community to unwind by connecting with new and old PSC friends will start in a couple minutes. When I finish, please go back to the platform and click on the Time to Celebrate tile. Patients and caregivers, please join us tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. You get 1 extra hour of sleep for our peer group sessions, our chance to share concerns, questions, and encouragement with our PSC peers who understand each other so well. If this is your first conference, you really don't want to miss tomorrow. So I'd like to end with one more huge thank you to absolutely everyone who has helped us make this conference and our inaugural ICR network so successful. Oh, the places we can go. Together, we're creating a world where a PSC diagnosis comes with a cure. Thank you, everybody.